It's fine to own uranium, invest in it, own it even. What you can't do without a license from your nuclear regulator is show up at the storage, the depository with a van and say, put the stuff in the back. You can't do that. You have to be regulated. But otherwise, trading, you can trade it and own it like any other commodity, oil, gas.
Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Triangle Investor Interviews. I'm your host Lucian Valkovic, and before I announce my guest, just a reminder of a disclaimer. This interview and all my interviews are not a recommendation to buy or sell any shares, products or services. Always do your due diligence and consult with your financial advisor. And my guest today is Lodewijk Van Setten, Director and General Counsel at Trillitech. Lodewijk, thank you for joining me today.
Absolute pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. Today we will go more deep on U308. We covered a lot in my prior interviews, but today I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to gain insight into the legal foundations that helped to bring XU308/uranium.io to the market. To start, could you share your experience in launching uranium.io?
Well, Lucian, that's been quite a journey, as I would imagine. It started with Curzon Trading, who are uranium in the OTC market, uranium traders, brokers rather, showing up almost 2 years ago, I think, with an idea to tokenize a fund that would invest in uranium, and they were inspired rather by Sprott Investments. So Sprott's SPROTT. They are an investment trust that is listed in Toronto. There's another one, similar investment fund, which is listed in London on the LSE, called Yellow Cake. Yellow Cake is another name for uranium oxide, or U308, which is the base product that we're talking about here. And I said to them, well, hang on a minute, how is this stuff actually stored, U308? Well, first, of course, like everybody, if you say uranium, oh my God, is that all right? So, not to worry, Curzon kindly produced lots of legal memos that said it's fine to own uranium, invest in it, own it even. What you can't do without a license from your nuclear regulator is show up at the storage, the depository with a van and say, put the stuff in the back. You can't do that. You have to be regulated. But otherwise, trading, you can trade it and own it like any other commodity, oil, gas, etc., etc. So it's actually not, if I may use TradFi terms, it's not a security, it's not a derivative, it's not any of a financial instrument, it's a commodity that you're investing in. So I looked at that and said, so where is it? And it turns out that there are 3 depositories in the world. One is in France, one is in Canada, and one is in the US. These are commercial depositories. They're called converters. And the reason is that the miners who mine the uranium ore bring it to the converters. They then mill it, and that's sort of the base concentrate called U308 that gets barreled up, and then they have a very sophisticated inventory management system, which is at the basis of how uranium gets stored, tracked, but also how legal title, if it gets sold, gets delivered. And that's key to what we've done. So Curzon has explained that to us. I said, so if I were to buy uranium from you, Curzon, uranium broker, what would happen? Well, they said, you would have to pay us in dollars, like most global commodities. Fine. We have dollars, so we can do that. How do I get it delivered? Well, you'll have to open an account with one of the converters. So what we did is we went to Canada. There is a player there called Cameco, very big in the uranium sector. We opened an account with the help of Archex, which is in the UK, regulated by FCA, and we bought uranium from Curzon. So one afternoon in November 2024, a Dutchman, me, in the BVI, bought £100,000 in weight from a Belgian in Cyprus. This is a true story. The 100,000 was delivered by, and the way that that works is just like security settlement. So the way that it works, you pay the money via the dollar payment settlement system. They arrived, then they deliver the uranium by way of so-called settlement instructions. So what happens is Curzon goes to Cameco in this case and says, please deliver debit £100,000 of units, because it's a fungible asset, right, uranium. The debit £100,000 from my account, credit £100,000 for Archex account, which is holding as custodian for us, Trillitech. So it's as simple as that. And you would think, oh, maybe there's all sorts of complexity because it is uranium, and no, there isn't. There isn't. As long as I said, as long as you don't show up with your white van and open the back and say, please put it there, then you need a license.
Yeah, definitely. And you explained that perfectly. I believe that every investor who just entered the uranium stock market and the uranium and understanding the uranium physical market now can get a sense of how is it to buy the physical stuff. So thank you very much for this explanation. What are some unique aspects of uranium.io legal structure? How does this structure enable accessibility and encourage market participation?
So the challenge that we walked into, or rephrase, the challenge that any investor that wants to, say, purely invest rather than being an end user, so like nuclear plants, hospitals, universities, there are lots of end users who need U3O8 or the nuclear fuel for their for whatever process they're using it for. So the market is very choppy, the OTC market, because it really is a market of miners, a bunch of brokers, and a bunch of end users. How that manifests is that the minimum trade you have to do to be able to get anyone interested is quite big. It is between £50,000 and £100,000, and these are the smaller trades. Note that £50,000 of uranium, U3O8, costs about $4 million at the moment. So it's not the sort of trade that is for the smaller player. Now, there are certain investors like Goldman Sachs, of course there is Sprott, the fund that I just mentioned, and Yellowcake. So there are others in the market that are not end users, but are basically buying it as an investment, financializing the OTC market. But they are quite, they're quite sizable portfolios. So Sprott sits on about, I think, 5 billion or something like that in US dollars worth. Goldman Sachs fund, and they have their own Cameco account, so they can go and buy and trade and so forth. So we're looking at that and going, now this market is ripe for fragmentation, right? Trying to get a trading venue organized that can do smaller trades or can handle smaller trades. So we are going to buy this inventory, as I just explained, and then we're going to set up trading venues. And the first one that we created is what you just referred to, uranium. Rephrase. I should say this the right sort of way because I am a lawyer. Sorry for the technical kind of precision. You can access that market via uranium.io. So uranium.io is the URL. It is basically a copycat of a Uniswap v3 pool. So what happens is we've set up a pool, USDC versus XU308. XU308 represents co-ownership in the inventory that we hold at Cameco. So it represents your direct ownership in that asset. And the update of the smart contract will actually, under English law, achieve an assignment of your property interest in the assets held at Cameco. So that's our first venue. We're looking for further venues. We're about to sign up with a number of centralized exchanges. They're still in the works, so I can't really disclose, but they are the well-known names, and they're very interested. They are looking at it and go, gosh, that is something different, and they're absolutely right. So one of the discussions we have is, okay, what are we actually looking at? Is XU308 a crypto asset? Or are you using blockchain technology to affect settlement legally? And this causes sort of a little bit of debate. I can see, Richard, that you're thinking about this now. What is he talking about? And what I mean by that is, if you have a crypto, so not every token is a crypto asset. That's another way of saying it. Sometimes what you're looking at is an ownership register on chain in a smart contract. And if you update that, you have achieved a transfer of ownership in the real world. But you're not necessarily achieved a transfer of a token as an independent object of property. What is, and yeah, I don't want to make it too complicated, but what is challenging in the current framework for crypto asset, that I see a token, I see an asset. And that's simply not always true. So our position is, and I'm pretty sure that we're correct here, we might have to have more debates with regulators should the time come, and say, well, look guys, the fact that you have created frameworks that say, okay, every token is an asset in its own right, so if you offer that, it has its own trading framework, denies the fact that what's happening here is spot trading of a commodity, which is not regulated in the TradFi. And the only thing we're doing is right now is using blockchain technology to facilitate settlement. We're not actually creating an independent crypto asset. And that's also manifested by the fact, for instance, that the way we've created the ledger is like a double layer. So we have one layer that's one-to-one. Every ounce of U308 that we have in storage is 1 unit. And then the second layer is the XU308 layer, which you can see is sort of like the numerator. So you have the denominator and the numerator. So you have 10 and 10 in 100. That means you have 10, 100 is 10% of the pot. What we also can do is then transfer or create new units at that level, dilute the other units, so your fractional ownership of what's in the pool comes down. So who would say that an asset dilutes, right? If a crypto asset if you have an asset, you can't dilute an asset, if that makes sense.
Yeah, again, great explanation. I believe that you probably will agree with me that the market needs more education on this topic. I mean, generally on tokenized commodities. What are you mentioned some, however, what are some most common questions or concerns regulators have raised?
So far, none. So the reason is, first of all, when it comes to the TradFi space, as I already mentioned, TradFi regulators, this is spot commodity trading, and it's not in scope of MiFID or indeed in the US, any of the 40 acts. It's only when you start making derivatives on commodities that you drag it into the TradFi space. But a spot commodity trade is not regulated. So that's where we don't have to worry. So the second realm is the crypto token realm, if you may. So we've submitted, or about to submit, a MiCA Title 2, as it's known, crypto assets registration. That's sort of the right word. There was some question whether this would be an asset reference token. And we've had this debates with lawyers in 3 different jurisdictions because MiCA hasn't really designated a single sort of point, so you end up wondering where best to go, basically. In this case, we decided to go to Ireland, and the reason is that the underlying legal structure that we're using, the custody structure, is relying on English trust law, And from my experience, being from Holland, the civil law jurisdictions are very, 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 how do you say that in a diplomatic way? They struggle a little bit with the concept of the trust. So we're thinking, let's go to Ireland because they will handle that well. So what the discussion then was, so I tried to say this is not a crypto asset. Most of the lawyers then come back and say, well, if I look at MiCA, it's a representation of value. And I go, what's that even mean, representation of value? Yeah, well, it's sort of stable value. I said, well, the value of uranium isn't stable. So what is it talking about? Well, it's asset backed. This is not asset backed. You actually own the asset. So why would you call that asset backed? So never mind. None of them were comfortable given the sort of broad sweep definitions in crypto. So that was one. So okay, I sort of said, well, never mind. Let's go and submit this white paper. But second, please don't tell me this is an asset reference token because there is none of that is going on. Yeah, and so that they all agreed with. So also not the least because it's diluting, as I said earlier. Now we've heard that some regulate. I think it was BaFin, not formally, but we had it in the sort of BaFin has looked at people who have used smart contract technology to register ownership of gold bars, and basically that's functioning as certificates of certification. So the tokens for certification. They were saying something that was an asset reference token, which point the whole legal community was in uproar. So I guess it's a long-winded way of saying, in answer to your question, whatever the regulator said, they haven't really gotten around to this yet, that battle lies ahead.
Yeah, pretty good and diplomatic answer. I have to agree with that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bridging traditional finance, commodities, and blockchain technology is not a small thing, especially given the constantly evolving regulations across the jurisdiction, just like you mentioned. What have been the most valuable insights gained from this experience?
Valuable. Interesting word. It is not easy. And I'm not sure that's a valuable insight, but let me say, it is an insight that you know in theory, but you only really understand once you experience it. It is not easy to do something new, right? People, we all are programmed to, biologically, we're programmed to kind of like what we know, and we do what we know, and then we scale it. And as humans, we're good at that. So if you then rock up and you say, this is actually exactly the same as, no, this is a crypto asset. We said, no, we're just using blockchain technology, but basically it's the same as security settlement, right? Because you have a custodian, they plug into a CSD, you want to move some your assets around. You're not actually moving the securities that are issued around because they're nicely sitting in the CSD. You're moving your actable ownership, your fractional ownership of the securities that are held in an omnibus account at CSD level. So we're doing the same here. Oh no, I see a token. So that has been, but what I've found is if you take enough time, and we've been at it for 2 years, but if you take enough time, at some point enough people see what you mean, and they go, this is interesting. So we've reached the point where it is understood, and we first had to say uranium.io, which we launched in December. You can show it works. People are trading. It's not big volumes, so we don't want that at this point because we're kind of testing. And we show that the back end works. We show that the settlement works. Everything is kind of in place, and it's working. And people getting very interested in that. They can see there's a price being made, right? So what we're trying to get is basically ultimately have a number of trading venues, liquidity, and therefore kind of almost have a dependence of the OTC market, if you see what I mean. Now we're sitting in the middle, bridging it. We aggregate the trades with Curzon. Once they get to 100,000, if the market goes one way, we sell it all back to them. They sell in the OTC market. Or once it goes, if it's all buy, then we get it from them and we feed it into that system. So that's sort of, but in say valuable experiences. No, we gained insights, new insights. I would say that. But it also means, and it's always true for all these things, is that you have to keep going. It's grinding.
Yeah, it's a new product, new insights. I get that part totally. When you do something from scratch.
Yeah.
Looking ahead, what's next for Uranium.io? What are you personally most excited about as the platform and the space evolve?
So the vision, which I think is attainable, is getting a real proper markets in smaller trades, right? And that could be billions in the end, right? And what that means is, so it's only limited by how much the miners can dig out of the ground, basically. And if you get that right, then you get a stable price of uranium, because that's currently not happening. It's very choppy, like London buses. These trades all happen all at once. They're big, and then it goes away. Apparently, it must be quite tough to be a broker in that business, frankly. So that will smooth it all out. It brings liquidity, and it brings financial sort of investment into the space, which is I think what we're about to see happen.
Yeah, what's your take, by the way, on the uranium market, generally on the uranium market supply gap, supply and demand picture going forward? Where do you see the market in next decade?
So the prevailing thesis, as in multiple, is first of all climate change, accelerate the reduction of CO2 emissions can only be done with the help of nuclear energy. I think all the countries, like not prominently Germany, that made that decision to kill their plants in the 90s or whenever Fukushima happened, was it early noughties, they all realized that was not great, with hindsight. Of course, it's always brilliant with hindsight, but that was not a great decision. So that's being reversed. Now the problem with this stuff is, of course, building plants is expensive, it takes a long time, etc., etc. So, but people feel that that sort of is the only way up, because renewable energies like wind and so on, it's too choppy again. Like when the wind's not there, you don't get it, and then you get lots of it, and then where do you store it? And then the batteries aren't good enough. So there's lots of problems there that need smoothing out. Second, AI eats energy, right? So there's a new kid on the block that needs a lot of power, and it's
Big kid,
yeah,
big, very big.
right? So you've seen, I think Meta and others, they've been buying plants now. So it's I think it's all seems to be coming together into a sort of a more mature uranium sector, which requires trading. And you know, what I love about this product is we're demonstrating the absolute base case for blockchain. I've always looked at it and said, look, we can do away, because I'm a TradFi guy. I've spent 20 years in asset management, and I have a hobby. Don't know why, but I have a hobby sort of into market infrastructures, custodians, Lehman Brothers going bankrupt. I thought that was fascinating, because did it all work and so on? And you can see it works, right? It works. The system works, the trust law works, the protection works. Even FTX, you've seen assets coming back and so on. So it works, but it's very layered, right? If you're in Belgium and you're holding securities, you probably have 3 layers in the middle between U.S. securities, between you and the issuer. This is expensive. There's a lot of IT which is creaking. Spinning up something new, we spend maybe $50,000 to $100,000 spinning up this the tokenization layer, getting it right. It's not, you just need to make sure you paper it, you get the trust, because that's a well-known instrument, the trust law. So it's you're putting these bricks together, but it's a very, very simple structure.
Yeah, definitely. Final questions. Final question for institutions or individuals interested in participating. Where should they go to learn more and gain access to XU308?
So right now what we have is uranium.io, and that's got all sorts of learning materials in it. also the uranium thesis as an investment thesis. So that's a good place to go. Watch the bigger centralized exchanges after the summer will be up and running there. So if you have an account anywhere, you can just start collecting some uranium into your investment portfolio. Again, this is not investment advice, please. If you personally think that is appropriate and suitable for you, and you want some deep alternative asset, as it's known in the TradFi space, then this would be easily accessible for $5 at the minimum. If that's your threshold for risk, then you invest $5 or 50 or 500, whatever you want.
Yeah, buying uranium for $5, that is unique, definitely.
You get an ounce. It's not much, but something.
Definitely. Lodewijk, thank you very much for coming to my show. You explained a lot of things, especially on the legal side. That is what I wanted to hear and bring more attention to that part. You did that very well. Once again, thank you very much, and I look forward to host you again sometime soon.
Absolute pleasure, Lucien. See you soon. Thank you for inviting me.